Right. With that said, let me start in today's session. So the first task is there will be small assignment you to work on this, and I want you to submit this to LMS. Okay, project scheduling is something that you do. For example, in this particular case, we talk about we develop specific time for each task, and then the timing is actually based on the various resources, and then whether it's depending on other tasks and so on, right? So ideally, project manager can use various charts, and we discuss Gantt and PERT charts are something that you can use for designing this. And then there are some software that you can use. So we have, in this particular case, the book recommends that there are software like Microsoft Project that you can use for that. And then there are many other online tools nowadays available for you to develop the plan, and then you can identify the total time it takes. So once you actually successfully develop the information system, ideally it should support any organization. For example, if you develop a student management system, ideally it should support institute like ours. So therefore, you have to have good, project management, and we have to have project management to, manage the project. Okay, so then the group work too, I think you have done this during our physical sessions. And the idea of the group work is to, apply the things that we have discussed in the theory. So it requests you to develop a SWOT analysis, and then proposing an information system, and then whether that proposed system is a strong business case. And then finally, we have to identify different ways of collecting data. We call fact-finding techniques like conducting interviews or perform surveys and so on. Right, so that's what I had from the last week one. Okay, so now let me start this week's one. So in this week, we are going to look at how to model the requirements. Now, the last time I told you, like when you are working with the system analysis part, we are going to identify various techniques to collect the data. So this part, we are going to look at how to model those requirements. And for that, what are the tools and techniques we can use? So let's start. Right, now, first of all, so all these, the tools, techniques we use actually depend on what development methodology you are using. Right now, we are discussing the very first one, the structured way to develop an information system. We call it system development life cycle. And we discuss, we have, different phases. Now, there are other, development techniques as well. We have listed some of them: joint application development, rapid application development, and also agile. If you look at what is happening in the industry right now, they mostly follow the last one, agile fashion of developing software systems. Right, now, when we talk about the system development life cycle, ideally, we talk about 5 steps: systems planning, which is what we have discussed last week. And this week, we talk about the system analysis, then system design, implementation, and then we have system support and security. So we will discuss in detail what are the the tools and techniques we will use in each of these different phases. Right. So in this graph, or this picture, what you see is the 5 phases in the system development life cycle. And the right-hand side, what you notice is the outcome of these 5 phases, right? For example, last time we discussed about the systems planning, and the outcome of this phase is preliminary investigation report. Right. Likewise, if you take the next one, which we will discuss today, we get what we call the system requirement document. Then we move on to the third one, which we call the system design. System design specification is the outcome. Then you implement, and then once you implement, you will get a functioning system. And the next one is systems security and support. And once you finish that phase, we will have the fully operational system. Right. Now, as I told you today, we discussed the very first one, starting with the system request. We were discussing SWOT analysis and putting a business case, and then you do the investigation, right? And then the output of this we call preliminary investigation report. The system analysis part is basically we call building a what we call the logical model of the system. Now for that, we have to use various different techniques. We have to conduct interviews, surveys, document reviews, observation, and sampling. So for example, if you want to get information from top people in an organization, you conduct an interview. So ideally, when you say conduct interview, it might take a very lengthy meeting, like at least 30 minutes. And then you can collect, various different facts related to system development. But then again, this is very limited. Usually this is limited for a top management because you don't have time for interview everyone in the organization. But then when you need large audiences, we can conduct something called surveys. You can put up questionnaires. And by providing questionnaires, then you can get the information that you need. Then the next one is document review. What I mean by document review here is you need to make various different types of reports. So therefore, you need to review the documents. For example, let's say in a university system, we need to get a transcript, right? Ideally, if you are using an information system to develop it, we need to collect those documents, right? And that's what we call the document review. Observation, another technique we will use, like, for example, if you do not have a good understanding about the particular organization, you can observe, right? So the observation is one way that you can actually move on to the organization, and then you can see what is going on in the organization. So this is called observation, right? Then you have sampling. Sometimes you might not be able to, collect information with everyone. So you will take a sample. So that's what we call the sampling. So ideally, after collecting all these facts, you build the business model, which we discussed last time. And then we will talk about data and process models and object models, which we will discuss this week and next week, right? And then you develop something called system requirements document. Right. The third phase is the design. Now, from the previous one, you collect all the requirements, but then again, you have to develop the design of the system. So in this stage, we talk about things like user interfaces, right? For example, nowadays we have, tools to do this. So you, instead of directly creating user interfaces, you design interfaces, like using software like Figma, for example, right? And then you have to design the outputs, report formats, you have to identify various different processes, right? And then that's one part of it. The second part is you have to identify the architecture of the system. For example, whether the system is a web-based system, whether it's a mobile, if it is web-based, whether you have, two-tier, three-tier, and so on. What I mean by two-tier and three-tier means like, whether you have, ideally we have in a web system, you have a server and client system, and how do you handle the front end and back end, right? So that's something that you have to determine. This is called application architecture. Then once you finish that one, you will get what something called system design specification. We include all the design documents. The next one is system implementation, which means that now you have all the design from the previous one. So ideally, you have to write your programs, right? You have to choose various the technologies, or maybe programming languages, the libraries, and then you have to develop the information systems. So you have to write programs, you have to test them, you have to document them, and then you have to install the system. So that's one way to do that. The second one is you can purchase, right? So that means there are two things. Like when you know that you want to develop a system, either you can develop it or you can purchase it. When you purchase, right, you have to do customization, right? You have to change, for example, look and feel, some of the functionalities and so on. So you have to do some modifications to the existing platform, right? And the outcome of this is the phase system implementation. You will get fully functioning information system, right? And ideally, you have a system to use immediately. The last phase in the system development life cycle is called system support, and then the security one. And what happens here, we have to maintain, enhance, protects the system. So what I mean by that is, initially sometimes what happens when you develop an information system, you might already have some errors which you need to fix. So ideally, one of the prime tasks in the maintenance is you correct any errors and also adapting to changes in environment, which means, for example, if the taxes are changed, then you have to update them in the information system. Then we can use various different enhancements which provide new features and benefits. So that means we want to maximize the something called return on investment, called ROI. That means you spend money on developing the system, and then how much monetary value you will get back, right? So that's what will happen in the system support and security, right? So when you talk about particularly security aspect of this, then we have to safeguard the system. Ideally, there could be threats coming from externally or internally. So if you design this system well, then it should be secure, reliable, maintainable, and scalable. So scalable means that nowadays, if the number of users are growing, so we need to expand. That's what we call the scalable. So with the cloud-based system and all, it's a matter of, identify the size of the system. So you need to identify those. Once you do that, then you can go to that is the end of all the 5 phases. Right. Now that's about the system development life cycle. And the second one we discuss is called joint application development, right? These are all joint application development, rapid application development, and agile, usually we say team-based approaches, right? So when you say joint application development, it's a popular fact-finding and requirement modeling technique, and you use users into the development process, right? And then usually they meet as a team, and we normally call that team. They meet, during a period of days or weeks. Sometimes it could be conference room or maybe offsite, and you look at the existing system and you talk to the users, get their inputs, their expectations, and then you document the user requirements. Now, what are the advantages of that? Ideally, you allow users to involve in the development of the information system. So ideally, you will get more accurate system requirements. You better understand the common goals, and then you can also have a strong commitment to success of the new information system. But then there are some problems as well. For example, it's more expensive, and sometimes when you have two large groups, right, compared to the size of the project. So that's something we can think as a disadvantage. Right, now that we have discussed two things, let's move to the third one. So the third one, we talk about the rapid application development. So as the name says, again, this is team-based one, and then idea is you need to speed up the information system development, right? So this is again a complete methodology like system development lifecycle, where we have 5 phases, but this one has 4 phases, right? Now, why companies are using this? Ideally, rapid application development, you can reduce the cost, the development time, and you can increase the profitability of the probability of the success. And then it's heavily relying on prototyping. That means, bringing up working models and then active user involvement. So what happens during this one? Once you have the prototype, and then users will be examining it, and they have to decide whether the system developed so far meet their needs. And if it is not, or if you want to change something, the users have to suggest any changes. And then based on this user information, right, they can develop the prototype, and then they will have interactive process, and then until the system is completely developed. So you can notice that this is what we have discussing so far, rapid application development. So you can see that it's 4 phases. We have requirement planning, user design, construction, and you have a cutover. So when we say requirements planning, the similar things that we have discussed earlier comes here as well, right? And you have to agree, like, what are the business needs, what are the project scope, and then what are the requirements. So you need to get the necessary approval to move on to the next one. So when you meet to the next stage, then you have 2 things can go in parallel. For example, in user interface design, you can talk to the users, and you can build the model and prototypes. Then when you look at the next stage, we call construction task, program and application development coding, unit integration, and system testing. So these are like 3 common techniques we use. Then we have cutover task. So after finishing this one, you will have data conversions, full-scale testing, system changeover, and then also like training users. So these are like some of the ideas based on the process model, rapid application development. Right. What are the advantages of using RAD? Then system can be developed quickly, and then you can save the costs. Disadvantages, one of the issues in this rapid application development framework, right? Um, we have to have mechanical system, and then we don't have to emphasize the company strategic business needs. So the risk is system might not work well in short term, but long-term objectives of the systems. So that might be the disadvantage. So to accelerate the process timeline, you can allow less time to develop quality, consistency, and design standards. The last one, what we have discussed is called agile. And as agile, it says it's dynamic model, building like multiple prototypes and then getting feedback from the users. Based on that, you are going to make some changes. The second point is if you have agile process, continuous developer reviews, extend and merge their versions into the final product. Third one, agile approach emphasizes continuous feedback and each instrumental step factor what was learned in the prior steps. So this is common nowadays. You will also notice that even in Sri Lanka now, people are moving towards this. So the example is Scrum. I hope you remember some of the ideas that we have discussed. So this is a picture taken from the official web. And then you can notice how the two-tier comes. You have something called product backlog. You can think of them as a set of features to be developed. And then you have a sprint planning. So there are like multiple people are involving in this one. This is called sprint planning. And then you have to prioritize them, maybe select prior attributes. In this case, we are using two. So we are using sprint backlog. Right. Now, I told you the other day, ideally, they're actually looking after monitor their teams. Right. Ideally, 2 to 4 weeks team, we can evaluate. Just looking at the name of this. So ideally, we will have pocket meetings every day. You review the progress. So that's how they will ask you to deposit here, which means or come out or implement. Right. Agile method is Scrum. Same as system development lifecycle, but more mental, physical compared to physical. So in Scrum sessions, which we call, then team have specific roles. You will have, for example, designation as pigs or chicken. And then you can include pig as a product owner, facilitator, development team, while the chickens include users, other stakeholders, managers. So Scrum sessions, you have some guidelines, then it emphasize time blocks, interaction, and team-based activities. So Agile team usually use a series of scrums to pause the action and allow the players to reset the game plan, which remains in effect until the next scrum. Right. What are the advantages and disadvantages? Like Agile method is very flexible, efficient to deal with the changes. So they stress the team interaction, set of community-based values, request deliverables, consistent validate and project reduce risk. So those are, we can consider them as advantages. What are the disadvantages? You need to have, let's say, a team member, you have to have high level of technical and interpersonal skills, right? So other point is ideally these methods may not use some of the structures. So yeah, we need to decide like what we are going to do. So over time, we will be subject to the significant change in scope as user requirements continue to evolve during the project. So that's what will happen. So ideally, we also have to follow the follow the you have to follow with the system, right? Okay. Now that we have discussed about the development technologies, we discussed four, starting from system development life cycle, right? And in system analysis space, we need system people like system analysis to understand the project, and it has to make sure that it will support the business requirements, and then you build the foundation. So here is how the graphical representation. You have requirement modeling, data process modeling, object modeling, and then it goes to development strategies. Right. So let's start. What are the activities as a system analyst? So you have to have the following four activities. First one, requirements modeling, data and process modeling, object modeling, and then you develop some strategies. Right. So when you say requirements modeling, you have to describe the current system and then also present the requirements for the new system. Then we have data and process modeling, and we need to represent the data and processes graphically. Third one, object modeling, especially with object-oriented rules. We can various different options, and we can prepare for the system design. So what are the outcome of this? The delivery of the system analysis available in system requirements document, which is the overall design for the new system. Right. So those are the very basic ideas. Now we are going to focus on the tools and techniques. Remember, we have done SWOT analysis, right? So likewise, we can have tools and techniques. Right. Now, model can be used by users, managers, IT professional, and they need to understand the design of the system. Second point, modeling involves graphical methods, non-technical language, represents the system at various stages of the development. And the third one, during requirements modeling, various tools are used to describe business processes, requirements, and user interaction. Okay, these three we are going to discuss. How do you describe business process? How do you describe the requirements? And how do you, make users to interact with the system, right? So system analysis use modeling. We can go. Okay, so we were discussing about modeling tools and techniques, which is essential one. And these different models help various different types of users. We have managers, professional, and most of the time you will notice that we are using some graphical modeling techniques so that everybody can understand, right? So we are using various tools. We describe the business processes, operations. We describe requirements, user interactions, and then we develop the diagrams. For example, we say functional decomposition diagram, which we will discuss today, and business process model, again, we discussed today. And then data flow diagrams, UML diagrams, and so on. So all these are different types of modeling tools we use. Right, now let's start with our first technique, right? And I want you to also develop something based on the organization that you have selected. So the first diagram that we are going to discuss, this is called functional decomposition diagram, or in short, we say FDD, right? So in this one, it will show you from top to bottom, we call top-down representation of functional processes. So using these diagrams, analysis can show various different business functions. And you can break into lower level functions and processes. So you can use in various stages. So you can use it in the requirements modeling. And during the requirements modeling, you use these diagrams to model business functions, right? And then these can be translated into modules, right? Again, we'll discuss how we can do that. So let's look at an example. So function decomposition diagram, I told you, you go from top to bottom fashion. For example, let's say we are developing an software information system for library management. Now, this will show you the breakdown. So you know that when you say library management, so there are various other functions you can identify. Human resources, where you handle the people, finance and accounting, library operations, fundraising, new user acquisition. So all these you can see once after library management, right? And then if you look at library operations, you can further explore more operations on budgeting, book management, personal assignment. Again, if you go through this one, book management, you can see add and remove books, check out, check out and return books, archive checkouts, list and user list, use updates, report generation. So all these comes under book manager. So likewise, you can see hierarchy of an software, right? So that's what we do in functional decomposition diagram or FDD. Now, let me show you another example. So in this particular example, actually, it's about developing an e-commerce website. And this is how the function decomposition diagram look like. First of all, you can see that it breaks into everything into two parts, customer services and administrative services. And within the customer service, you can see a customer can browse, search, read reviews, and write reviews. Then you have shopping cart. You can create it. You can add, delete items, custom authorization, user profile, purchase history, purchase, and so on. Then use new user registration. So you can see it will give you a very clear cut of what is the task available under each of these. Similarly, if you look at the administrative services, you have edit inventory, adding a new book, and update inventory. Again, you can notice the hierarchy. Right. We'll do a small exercise. Right. The next thing that I want to discuss is business process modeling. So what business process modeling does is we are modeling the process. Here are some examples: airline reservation, filling a product order, update customer count. For example, in our example, in a student information system, like how do you register a student? Registering a student. So that is one example for a process because it contains various different tasks. Okay, so let me introduce the graphical representation. Ideally, you will have a main box like this, and then you will have the system name. So this system here is called order processing system. And then we have different users. You have two users here. These are called swim lanes. We have a new customer and we have existing customer. Now, what we are trying to highlight here is if you have a new customer, so what the task you have to perform. So you have to first obtain the credit data, validate the credit, and then you assign the customer number. If you're an existing customer, then you have to process order, prepare billing, and then create shipping data. So that will give you what are the tasks and how they are connected to each other, right? Okay, let me give another example. So in this example, we have extra symbols as well. So ideally, there are a couple of graphical notations we will use in business process modeling. Right now, like in previous case, you can notice that we have a rectangle shape when we have whatever the organization software. For example, here we say ABC company, and then we have three users: employee, manager, and HR. So in this one, what we are trying to explain is how do you apply for a leave. Ideally, if you work for a company and when you want to get a leave, you have to make a request, and then somebody has to approve your leave, and that's what it is represented. Okay, notice the starting point. You see a small circle here. This is called start event by filling the leave application form. That's the first task. Right. Now, once you fill your leave application form, for example, leave application form means you have to say that, okay, when do you need the leave and what kind of a work you do and things like that. And that's what the first. And after that, right, what you notice here is different tasks. So these are the first tasks. And then you have arrows, which indicates the sequence. So this is the start. And then after filling the leave applications, you move on to this task. So you have to submit for approval. So this is the employee side, and we focus on what is happening to employee. So once your leave application submitted, it comes to manager, right? Manager has to evaluate the details and then make an approval, right? So here you see diamond-shaped blocks. So this is normally we will use for decision making. So when you want to have evaluate leave application, are you going to approve it? So two answers. That means you have different tasks. So if you say yes, right, then your request is accepted and you can manage the application. And if you say no, then you have to inform the employee. So whatever it is, you can notice the second one, we normally call bold circle. We used to indicate the end of this. So possibly in this one, we have two end events. One is you manage application and you will get the leave, right? And the second side, what you notice is inform employee and the request is declined, right? That's how we can see in process management, right? We call business process model, business process modeling, we call it. Okay, one line example just to show you like a detailed one. Again, I have taken from, I guess, a book. And what it shows you is ordering pizza by a customer. So you can see this is separated now. This is the customer, this is the pizza shop. So whenever the customer is hungry, and then you can select a pizza, and then you have to order pizza as well. So that constraint you have to specify. Then we have a decision block, making different decisions. And then you perform payment and then you exit pizza. So that's one way to do this. The second one is you ask for a pizza, right? And then you are going to understand different values. For example, we have baked pizza, which then you will deliver the data. So you can notice that we have a price shopping center, pizza chef, and pizza delivery. And finally, you have bolded text, right? Okay. So any question on this one? Very similar notations we have noticed. And then we have different types of entities. We have customers, and then we have print shop. So we have used bpmn.io to draw a bpmn diagram. So we have discussed a couple of notations. We use a simple circle to represent the start event. And then we also used a couple of tasks. So we have submit request and then review request. And these are two users we have discussed. We have used employee. This side we have employee. And this side we have manager. And this is document. So we have document, right? So now these are called swim lanes, and then we indicate different types of users. And users, the one who start with the submitting the request, and it goes to the manager. Manager review the request and make a decision here. This is called a gateway normally, or decision block here. And then if it is yes, then you have to order the item. And then we have put down in the procurement this side. And that's the end. If it is not, you have to notify the rejection. And then that's the end of the submit request here, right? Right. Yes. So I hope you got a basic understanding about what business process modeling is. What I want to highlight something is why we are doing this, especially when you want to understand the whole process and maybe to improve the process. So ideally, this graphical representation can be used to improve a particular process. You can see the problematic areas, right, in a process, and then by change or modify, so you can improve this, right? That's why we are using business process modeling techniques. Okay, I hope you understood the basic usage of business process modeling. Right, the next one, let's move on to the note. The next one, we have to talk about another diagrams, but I am not going to discuss those diagrams. This might be very confusing if you do too many today. First one we discussed today is function decomposition diagram, or FDD, and business process modeling. That's what we have discussed. Right. Okay. Now let's move on to the next part, system requirements. So during requirements modeling, the developers has to identify, describe all the system requirements, and the requirement is something that we need to include in the system. It's a feature. Sometimes you can say it's a feature. And then the requirements can be into 5 categories: outputs, inputs, processes, performance, and controls. So let me give an example. Now, let's say we have a student record system. So output of the student record system produce the transcript, right? And when you talk about the transcript, we have to include the course code, course name, number of credits, grade, date of examination, and so on. Input, The grades must be entered on machine scannable or prepared by the instructor. So that's we have to do, and how we input the data. Process. So when you input all the courses, the credits and the grades, the system should calculate the GPA. And when they calculate the GPA, they have to calculate GPA at the end of each semester. So that is another example. Next, performance. For example, we have to say like how many users that you need to handle simultaneously. So that's something that we need based on the performance of the system. Last one, control. We will say the system must provide logon security at the operating system level and at the application level. When we say operating system, you remember that when you log into operating system, you have to provide a username and password. Application also we can have security. Like in the applications also we can have username and password. So that's what we emphasize here. Then when you talk about the fact finding, these ideas we discussed earlier as well. You have to perform interviews, document reviews, observation, questionnaires, sampling. Right? So those are the ideas we will use to collect information. And when you do that, for example, let's say you are conducting interview, you have to have good interview skills. You have to plan them, and then you are meeting a person, so you have to have strong interpersonal communication skills. And then you have to decide like who are you going to interview, because you have a limited time, and usually interviews takes time. So then you have to decide on which people you are going to interview. And then you have to set the objectives, and you have to prepare questionnaires, then you have to conduct, and then you have to analyze. Right? So therefore, people tend to use a lot of software which helps this. Okay, just to summarize what we have discussed, we were looking at the requirements modeling, and then you have to have a clear understanding of the processes, requirements. And for that, we have discussed function decomposition diagram and business process modeling diagrams. Okay, so the last task, the remaining 20 minutes or so, I want you to work on groups. And here is the task for today, and we will continue this during the weekend in your physical session. So in this group work, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put you in groups. And as a group, you have to identify the system requirements. So ideally, you first identify organization. For example, we can say library management system. And then you set some objectives. Remember, we discussed earlier as well. Right? And then you identify system requirements. So when I say system requirements, maybe you can take a picture of this. Something similar to this you need to identify. What are the requirements for output, input, process, performance, and control? So you have to identify these 5 based on the application, based on the software system that you propose. Right? Take a picture of this. Maybe I can share this in the chat. So this you need. This is what you need to develop for the first place. Right? First, look at the particular information system and then identify the requirements. Then once you do that, I want you to develop the function decomposition diagram. Remember, we have noticed diagrams. Let me give you an idea like something. Okay, for the library, we'll give you, okay, this is the function decomposition diagram. So develop FDD for your system like this. Right? So I have put down everything. Right, I will put the slides as well since you are requesting. Yeah, you can then. I will share, right, when you do that. Okay, so I will copying the group work as well. So I think you have everything that you need now. Okay, let me put you into groups now and start discussing. And I will allow you to share, you know, um, your screen as well. You should be able to. If you have any issues, just let me know. I'll be available till 10 o'clock. Right.